Are we experiencing a societal collapse? And just to be clear, I'm not talking about a collapse of civilization or the economy or government systems. I'm just talking about society itself, the way that we relate to one another, the way that we connect and interact as human beings. Because it really does feel like society is unraveling. People seem more disconnected, more divided, more hostile than ever before. And for those of us who have been around for a while, it's hard not to notice how different things feel. I've lived through the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, and I've never seen anything quite like what's happening today. The last decade has felt incredibly toxic and emotionally exhausting. Everything seems louder, more hostile, more chaotic. Everyone's on edge. Everyone's anxious or agitated. People are more reactive and hostile. And what seems to be driving it is the media landscape in which we find ourselves. Of course, there are probably many other factors at play. There usually are. But I do think that social media and mainstream media in particular have played a primary role in shaping the current social predicament. I started noticing a real shift somewhere around 2015, maybe even earlier. Suddenly, everything in the media became exaggerated, hyperbolic, hyper emotional, overly dramatic, and sensationalized. But that's when everything started to feel tense and unsettling, like the information being presented was designed to provoke rather than inform. Every headline, every video, every post seems like it's designed to spark fear or outrage. The way that news stories are covered, the tone that's used, the language, it all seems as if it's intended to trigger these intense emotional reactions. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to twist the truth, you have to distort reality, sometimes you even have to lie, because it's all about getting people's attention. And the more sensational it is, the more attention it gets. And this kind of content is keeping a lot of people in a perpetual state of anger and anxiety, which in turn is causing some people to have mental breakdowns, which makes them very unstable and potentially dangerous. I think this could explain, at least in part, the increase in violence that we've been witnessing. Because when people are walking around feeling agitated and on edge, it really doesn't take much to make someone snap. And all of this is being pushed by algorithms. Algorithms that are also pushing people into corners, pushing you into echo chambers and information bubbles, where you only see one side of the story, where you're constantly being fed the same biased narratives, where you're constantly being manipulated emotionally and psychologically, where you get stuck in the endless loops of outrage and anxiety. And it's no wonder that people are losing their minds. And you can see it everywhere. People aren't thinking clearly or critically. They're not behaving rationally. They're reactive, they're impulsive, they're quick to anger. And it's really creating a lot of problems in society. And I don't know what the solution is, because some people are so far gone, so out of touch with reality, so deep in the madness that they can't be reasoned with. And the system itself incentivizes the madness. If you're a content creator, for example, the more extreme, the more emotional, the more outrageous you are, the more attention you get. And the more attention means more revenue, more money. More attention means the algorithm will push you to the forefront, to the top of the feed. And so the most irrational voices are the ones that get amplified, while the voices of reason and calmness and clarity often get drowned out. So what do we do? As a society, what do we do? How do we come out of this chaos? How do we find our way back to sanity, back to calmness and clarity? How do we repair what's broken, what is torn, what is fractured? I think the first step is to just stop and observe, to step back for a moment and really notice what's going on. And not just in the world out there, but in the world in here, to observe what might be going on in your own heart and mind. Notice when you're being pulled into the chaos. Notice when something online provokes you to feel angry or scared. Notice when you start slipping into hostility or hatred. And when you do, simply pause, take a deep breath, let everything settle, and try to see if you can regain a little bit of clarity in the moment. Notice how fear and anger cloud the mind. Notice how they obscure our ability to think clearly and rationally, how we become reactive rather than reflective, and see if you can reflect in those moments. Notice how fear and anger keep you trapped in survival mode, always agitated and on edge. Notice how they make you impatient. Notice how they get in the way of the heart, how they prevent compassion from arising, how they stand in the way of understanding. And instead, we become more prone to feeling hatred toward others. Just notice these things. And when you find yourself caught up in fear or anger, take a moment to pause, to breathe, to check back in with the present moment, to let your thoughts settle, to let the tension soften, and to return to a state of relative clarity and calmness. And I'm not saying that you should never feel angry. I'm not saying that you should never feel afraid. These are valid emotions that have their purpose. But there's a difference between feeling those emotions when they're necessary and being manipulated into feeling this way all the time. I also want to encourage that we be conscious of how we engage with one another, both online as well as in person. And to remember that we're all human. We all have feelings. We all have our personal struggles. We all want to feel safe and cared for and understood. So how can we engage in ways that lead to more peace, to more harmony, to more understanding, to more connection and compassion, instead of hostility and division? I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this. What are some things that we can do individually as well as collectively to help heal the divisions, to calm the chaos, and to encourage more civility, kindness, and cohesion in our society? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. If you find value in this content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.